Thank you very much indeed. I'm a little bit sweaty. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm quite nervous. I feel really emotional in saying what I want to say to you, because I'm not just saying hello, I'm actually saying hello again. And more than saying hello again, I owe you a really big thank you. Because 2 years ago, I was here on the very same slot talking about this metaphor that I'd created called the Chief Purpose Officer, which is a big idea I wanted to tell the world about why businesses need to take purpose more seriously and take it seriously at a strategic and kind of C-suite level and invest in it. But it was just a metaphor. But this day, like today, was totally amazing. The theme was about action and actually doing it. And as I listened to all these people throughout the day in this tiny little room, we were on this kind of tunnel of doing something. And by the time that I got up to speak, I couldn't not do something. And it changed from being a metaphor to being my job description. Livity had just turned 15 years old, and it was the same year that I discovered that the new average life cycle for a business was 15 years old, and I was at a personal and professional crossroads wondering what to do, and it became clear that's what I'd written, my job description. And in this room, in this moment, in this big chat of what should we actually do, I decided that maybe this is it. And I don't know if you've ever allowed your fate to be in the hands of complete strangers, but it's a very strange thing. And I asked the audience to vote on whether or not this actually should be my job description, being really honest that I just made it up. And the vote was conclusive. We went for some beers, and I got on the train and went home, and the votes started coming in via the medium of Twitter. Do it, they said. Do it, they said. Do it, they said. And I was inspired, I was excited, I was emotional, and I was, to be honest, a little bit drunk. But, you know, some of mankind's best decisions are made at that moment, and so I announced back to the community that I felt so completely now bonded with and have done for the last 2 years, more than you possibly can imagine, that I would do it. And that was it. I became the Chief Purpose Officer in that moment. And the next morning I awoke, and it was a beautiful sunny September day, and it was a life anew, and I started explaining it all to my daughter. This was going to be the most exciting thing. I finally found the direction that I needed to take Livity into its next generation. And she didn't really care. She was 2 years old, and I was feeding her porridge. So when she had a nap, I did what anybody else would do, and I started a Twitter page. Because that's what you do, right? And I sent 5 tweets that morning. And I got 10 followers. And I learnt that revolutions don't start on Twitter, sadly. But an idea began, an idea in the back of my head about ideas, about what happened that day, and about what causes action, about what causes change. And I just got a mortgage around that time, so I'd also just discovered what compound interest meant. And it depends on what side of compound interest you're on as to whether or not it's your friend or not, right? You will know that. But it stayed with me that ideas compound. And more than ideas compounding, I think imagination compounds. And I'm not sure that Twitter is the best place for that. So I took this idea of Chief Purpose Officer out into the world. I became officially the Chief Purpose Officer. I was talking about it, and I was writing about it, and some of the wonderful people who've been here. Actually, who was it? Was anybody here those 2 years ago? Am I talking to some of the same people? You don't know what effect you had on my life, and I'm really, really grateful. Yeah, some of you gave me more opportunities to talk about it. And look, then much cleverer and more intelligent, more sophisticated people with bigger platforms than me started talking about it. And August, an organization who I really profoundly respect, did a little map. They worked out where the Chief Purpose Officer sits on the C-suite, which I hadn't even thought that one through. And so it was happening. It was really happening. And then something else happened, and you will remember this, although we're all trying to forget about it. 2016 happened. And, you know, in the year that humanity voted against itself, something else happened for Livity. And whilst we'd been 15 years championing this idea of marketing for good and working with diverse young people to really mix it up and be the source of our innovation, a new agency model was launched by one of the world's biggest media networks, Dentsu Aegis, who launched a digital marketing for good agency staffed by diverse youth, which where I stood wasn't such a new business model. But obviously we hadn't been talking about it loud enough for the last 15 years. But that's quite a good competitor to have. You know, if we're talking about fighting, come on, Dentsu Aegis. They're not really the problem, because, you know, we all know you have to innovate faster than anybody can imitate, and frankly, fuck you, Dentsu. The real problem is over here, this guy, and about 10 others like him, who were starting really radical, really different, really interesting, really inspiring businesses. And they're our alumni, my young people. The thousands of young people who've come through Livity, been inspired, decided to take change into their own hands. We encourage them to go and change the world. Then they start organizations a bit like ours, and then they start beating us in pitches and stealing your staff. And I'm really proud. I'm pleased for them. And we still mentor them, of course we do, because that is what change is. If the change that you're not trying to create isn't in some way the change that the world needs, then I would urge you to raise your sights. And you'll know this, because if the change you're aiming to achieve isn't in some way related to your own redundancy, then you're not trying to put the problem out of business. our success would mean our redundancy. There's a really interesting relationship between those two things, and it's an interesting check for your own level of ambition for the change that you're trying to create. The year rolled on as Chief Purpose Officer, and I did things I've never done before. I raised some investment. We raised £1.5 million worth of investment from a social investment firm which went into Livity to double down on our purpose and create new opportunities for more young people to come through and grow the business and its impact out there in the world. Because we know that it's not just the change that we make with young people, it's the change that we want to create in the industry as well. That's how we'll really move gears to create change. That's how our idea will compound to a greater effect, more so than just us on our own. I went further here in Campaign, that fabulous publication. They're talking about the Chief Purpose Officer because I handed over to our new Chief Exec, the amazing Alex Goat. I had joked for some years that turning 40, you'd be too old to run a youth agency, and it turned out it wasn't a joke. But happily, there is a new breed of leaders within my organization who I'm proudly handing over to as they take this organization in a very different direction. And as Anthony, thank you very much for the reference, noted, the Chief Purpose Officer was immensely proud to be with his new leadership team and his new CEO. And we'd already picked up an award at the Beamers, and we were remarking how interesting this award was. They had now had a diversity category, an impact category, a conscience category. They had the lot. And, isn't it nice to think that perhaps we're a bit of a ripple of that? And then the surprise at the end of the night, that actually for the first time ever, the Beamers had given the Grand Prix to an organization, not a campaign, was to us for that recognition. So those gears had caught, those gears had found the right place. Our idea had compounded and changed an industry. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the difference that you made in my career, in that moment, the focus you gave me by allowing myself to fully embrace this new idea, compound it, and become a Chief Purpose Officer. Talking of Chief Purpose Officers, those who were here before, remember this slide? I'd Google Chief Purpose Officer, and I'd look them up on LinkedIn. There were none, there was just me. Now I'm proud to say there are 208 of us, which is quite good. If you're interested in business and purpose, I really recommend that you follow Adfel. I don't really know how he has the time to do any work, but he really does post a lot of awfully interesting stuff on this kind of topic. We've got one at PwC, one of our biggest Chief Purpose Officers. But as you'll notice, I haven't really got around to connecting with the other ones. You think I'll be all over the community, but the truth is I might have got bored of my idea. Or it might be that purpose in business is no longer the problem. I begin to think we may have won that argument, or certainly have begun to. And as I look out after 2016, 2017 surely has come along, and the problem has changed, hasn't it? This is really the problem. If the change that you're trying to create does not in some way ladder up to the change that the world needs, then I urge you to widen your scope. This, dickhead, is the problem. And I don't mean the polar bear. I mean the idea of democracy broken in such that it doesn't represent the people who are voting and participating in it. I mean the biosphere that is 30% over its capacity. I mean the world that can't compete, can't even negotiate with the level of human movement that we've got currently, which is nowhere near that which is coming our way. I mean the fact that we have got an absolute vacuum of imagination in the kind of leadership that we need. And when we are all hoping that someone's got a plan and we're all talking about change, there isn't the kind of change plan that's required at the top. And if you're anywhere near the ideas of automation truly that we've discussed today, leading us to 50% unemployment, or the likelihood of another economic collapse, or the certainty of some kind of environmental event, or the threat of thermo-apocalyptic nuclear war that is just on our doorstep, if there's not a slight sense of creeping cold fear at the bottom of your stomach, then I think you might be in the wrong gear for the change that we need. To try and help you get that sense of fear, I think it's really important to understand the leadership that we need, the imagination vacuum, the crisis of imagination that is at the top. Right? It really is. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Tell me if you believe in it. Tell me if you think that the people in charge with their hands on the levers of power have got the plan that this world requires. I'm a big fan of a Donald Trump meme. Who's not? But it's not enough. It really isn't enough. It's not going to change the world. The answer now, my friends, the definition, the word of change that really needs to be in your mouths is one of rebellion. An exciting, super cool Star Wars kind of rebellion, of course. Which begs the question, whom do we follow? Who is out there creating that kind of radical and innovative, disruptive change? Or who really knows what those words mean anymore? Have we said them one too many times? I can give you my definition. My definition is breaking the rules, but not just breaking the rules, because we can all break rules. It's breaking the rules and making them better. It's rewriting rules. We need structures, of course we do, but the ones that we've got are not fit for purpose. So who's going to rewrite them? Who's got the balls to break them? And who's got the creativity to make them better? I don't think there's many people really representing that in a capacity of leadership at the moment. And I think if we're really going to understand the future, you have to look backwards. And as I've looked back and back and back, I think I found them. I think I found a type of leader and a type of rebel that you deserve, that's good enough for you. Everybody knows them. Everybody loves them. Not everybody loves them. Some people hate them. But everybody has a relationship with them. The time of the Chief Purpose Officer today is dead. Today, it is time to be more pirate. And don't worry, I know what you're thinking. Everybody has their preconceptions about pirates. Good, bad, children's parties, bad movies we've seen, whatever. You're going to walk all those preconceptions today off a plank. We're going to change your understanding of piracy forever, and you will leave with a whole new history, a darker history, a truer history, a more strategic history, a more mischievous history, but a factually accurate and historic history, and we'll change your perspective on pirates forever, and you will leave with them as your new role models, I promise you. I want to talk about these wonderful people. Over here, we've got Captain Black Sam Bellamy at 28. He was the most billionaire, most fantastically wealthy pirate, but that wasn't what he was about. He was about social justice and fairness. If you ever read the quotes of Black Sam Bellamy, he was talking about equality for all men around the world. This is Captain Blackbeard Edward Teach, the archetype of pirate branding. He really believed in living the brand. In a fight, he'd put little burning fuses at the end of his hair just to create that most scary idea. Over here, we've got Black Caesar, who escaped as a slave and became the most successful black pirate of all. Over here, we've got Anne Bonny, who was an inspiration for the kind of the proto-feminist literary circles of London, and her effect continues on to this day. In fact, she is the inspiration for some of the most powerful images of liberty that we see in the world. At their time, this is how they were regarded. You have your preconceptions. At the time, they were the front page news. They were the unicorns of their time. They were the only place you could go and rise up to the top and make extraordinary amounts of money and be treated differently and be treated fairly and have your own say in your determining your future. I'm just at the tip of the iceberg of this. You're probably still full of cynicism, I hope, about pirates really as role models and, really Jay-Z pirates. Bear with me if you will, because I can talk quite fast and we haven't got long. But I would just like to dive into some facts to help recalibrate your understanding of pirates. Some historical facts. So let's talk about dual governance. So, the idea of dual executives, which brought about kind of governance and organizations that we haven't seen before. The pirates operated on their boats way before anybody else. The captain was in charge of strategy. The quartermaster was in charge of culture. They had even say on a pirate ship, absolute even control. They had this years before the Great Repeal Act, which then led to the dual house system in the United States, which then led to the idea of chief executives and boards creating dual governance. First place it was ever seen recorded on Earth. Similarly, global branding. We all think that was Coca-Cola, all of us in the branding and advertising world, but of course it wasn't. It was the skull of crossbones many years before. The idea of social insurance, did anybody know? Now an inalienable human right, first ever seen on a pirate ship, and so on it continues. The idea of fair wage ratios, which was one of the chief factors identified in the financial collapse, the disparity between the highest and the lowest paid. On a pirate ship, there was a fair wage ratio. And the list goes on, my friends, because we've got diversity by design, open principles that we're still fighting over, that the pirates fought over, and then they eventually won when the United Nations recognized them in the seas, all the way through to same-sex marriage and cocktails. It's true. Matrilage was seen on pirate ships. They created and recognized deep and meaningful relationships between men on those boards. They had a ceremony. There was legal rights to it. You inherited the other's wealth. They were light years ahead of the rest of us. All of these things, and not by coincidence, because of circumstances at the time, circumstances that feel remarkably similar today. And when I say pirates, it's important to note that I'm not talking about all pirates. There are some incredible pirate stories. Madame Shin, who escaped from a brothel aged 13 and ended up commanding a troop of 40,000 pirates. We're not talking about her. The sad story of the Somali pirates, victims of a terrible civil war. We're not talking about her. We're talking about very precisely the golden age of pirates. 300 years ago exactly. 300 years ago precisely, this year, when Sam Bellamy died. When the world looked scarily similar. When multinational corporations first came into being and were extracting the wealth of the world, causing environmental collapse and absolutely destroying civilizations. When ideologies were at war and killing, murdering thousands with them. When you had huge political, really uneven politics, and the working masses absolutely disenfranchised in what they were doing. The diaspora of workforces looking for more meaning. And I can't say it better than Black Sam did. They vilify us, the scoundrels do, when there is only this difference. They rob the poor under the cover of law, forsooth. And we plunder the rich under the protection of our own courage. Had you not better make one of us than sneak after the asses of these villains for your employment? I'm with you, Sam. An update to that, slightly more famous, of course, is Steve Jobs. Or my personal update for you, simply be more pirate. There are values here, there are lessons here, there's something deep in history here. It's not coincidence that all those effects were first seen in a very small type period of individuals who decided to stand up against a very unfair world and create change, because that's what they did. That's why I think they could be an inspiration, because at this particular moment, anything less than radical intention isn't enough. The backbone of their success was the Pirate Code, which you may have heard of. The Pirate Code is law amongst pirates, and it's a series of articles that pirates agree together before they go on their mission. It's quite interesting. We will assemble our teams, but we already know what our mission is. They were values-first people. Values and principles first. Then that determined what the mission was going to be. The codes are a matter of historical record, and you can go and see them. There are 4 surviving pirate codes, but there were hundreds at the time. These are the exact words that will give you an idea of these really advanced, prescient ideas, democratic ideas, ideas of social justice and fairness and innovation and a better way of organizing themselves than many of those than we have now. You know, it's totally true. Workplace compensation had never been seen before. It took an awful long while for the rest of civilization and capitalism to catch up. First ever seen on a ship. And what happened, over a period of nearly 40 years, each crew would adopt and adapt the other's principles. You know, which is remarkable. Over 40 years, you saw real consistency. Some principles barely changed a word over 40 years. There was no Google or Piratepedia or anything for them to cross-reference. These were written documents that, by and large, you had to throw over the side when you got into a fight because you'd be hung if there was any true evidence of you being a pirate around. They had an incredible, flexible, dynamic system that allowed us to stand up against the world's superpowers. And for 40 years, a tiny group of committed individuals fought for freedom, fought for plunder, fought for treasure, and there are some moral issues that we can talk about later. But in terms of what we want to learn from, and from an organizational sense, this true history of the pirates has never been shared. So I ask you, who you follow? Do you really follow people who are changing the world? With a proven track record of changing the world, who are creating the kind of change that the world needs, because that's where your scope needs to be. So I have an idea. 2 years later, I have a new one, luckily. And based on this history that I've learned an awful lot about, and in 15 minutes we've covered quite a bit, I think it's time for an update. A Pirate Code 2.0. It's a bit of a glib term, but I was here with Chief Purpose Officer last time, so it's a theme. And what I'm looking for, and what I'm looking to you for, is articles. New articles to fill the Pirate Code. So that pirates around the world can take inspiration and they can adopt and adapt different articles that are creating change. And in some of the ways we saw some of those previous ideas that first appeared on a pirate ship in the middle of nowhere, ideas like fair pay, workplace compensation, ideas that eventually changed the world, might find themselves in a similar crucible. I've already found some. I see lots of pirates around me. Here's one of my favorite ones to kick us off. Business plans are dead. The idea of being prepared for the unpredictable, being agile and refining every day, not just on a planning away day, developing responsive tools and accurate measurement, clear goals and resilience. It's principles that determine teams. This was given to me by some social entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, and I was asking them about business planning. They said, business plans, Grandad? We do manifesto jams. Yes. And I think it's a shame. Every time you meet someone with a really great new idea, by and large, at some point, someone who looks a bit like me comes along and slaps them a business plan to structure their ideas. It's a 115-year-old document that needs a serious upgrade. Article 2, long live citizens. I've drawn this from the incredible organization, the New Citizenship Project. Their idea that we continuously are bombarded by this notion of consumerism has created this really unhealthy relationship between us and the world of finite resources. And what would happen if you replaced that with the idea of the citizen? It is a world-changing, simple idea. Bang, it's going straight in, the original Pirate Code 2.0 for other people to draw their articles to create their codes. 3, the inversion of expertise. Let's get really, really serious about celebrating making shit up. A few years ago, failing was all the rage. I reckon we can move on from that. I think it's time to really get behind making shit up really, really well. How else are you going to move as fast as the world needs us to? I've drawn that article from Livity. And the articles are going to continue. And I've seen inspiration for some today. And I can't get into all of them now. But luckily, I got myself a book deal after becoming a Chief Purpose Officer. And the Be More Pirate will be out in May next year. Sign up here. But I am clearly a man near a deadline working on his material. I am seeking articles to help me make sure this book is representative of the best change makers that I can see out there. The very best change makers. We know there are great pirates who fulfill my pirate criteria, but I'm looking for the guys at the edges. I'm looking for the organizations who are really the ripples that are going to become waves to create change. And I've, of course, created a 5-point matrix of being a pirate, which I'll be happy to share with you. But for the purposes of today, I've simplified it a little bit. I've simplified it down from the points that I believe are the fundamentals of being a modern pirate into one line. The kind of line I'd like you to take away. Cause good trouble at the edges to make the middle better. That's how I believe we start to really, cause good trouble at the edges to make the middle better. That's how I think you compound imagination. That's how I think those ideas grow. And this is how the pirates did it, just to summarize, because I'm on time. So let's go back to the Golden Age. It finished around 1625. There's all these pirates. They were absolutely crushed by the world powers because they couldn't allow this new type of organization to catch fire around the world as it already was. And so they finished them, floored them, hung a load of them, and they all had to go back to where they were from. And of course, where were most pirates from? Wales. Another matter of historical record, my friends. Actually, Wales and the southwest and the northwest, they had the absolute monopoly on pirates. And they came back to a world which was in the middle of the beginning of the Renaissance, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It's William Blake's dark satanic mills. There's children unspinning jennies and going up mines and in factories. And a terrible, terrible, awful way of people being treated within all these different structures as industrialization took hold. And what emerged? The cooperative movement. Robert Owens, the founder of the cooperative movement, was born in the next village from Captain Morgan, the world's most famous pirate. You cannot tell me, people who know how influence works, that there wasn't some influence. But go one step further. The 7 founding principles of the cooperative movement are exact matches for the pirate code. Democracy, fair systems of distribution. Every single one of those principles of the cooperative movement, which now 1 in 10 people benefit from, is found in the pirate code. In the next village. So anybody here who's involved in mission-led business or social enterprise, this is no longer a metaphor for you. This is your bloodline. You are pirate by descent. And it goes on. If you're interested in democracy, the idea of the pirates which they had on their ships, a pirate captain called Benjamin Hornigold decided they should try them out on land. They moved to a republic in Nassau, in the Bahamas. And on land, they created the first ever written constitution that this planet has ever seen. And in that written constitution, it said all men should be treated equally. And over time, over the next 20 years, the relationships the pirates had with the colonial governors who were planning to kick out Britain of that part of America before it declared independence were the patrons of the pirates. They were their armed militia. Blackbeard was seen at Governor Spotswood's wedding. These are all matters of historical record and fact. So when those words appeared again, a little while later, when Thomas Jefferson and the other colonial governors who became the founding fathers were seen. And I wouldn't be so naive as to suggest that you should think that the American Constitution was written by pirates, but I also think it would be naive to be that close and not expect there to be some influence. And so, if you are looking for a role model for radical change, if you agree with me that there might be a crisis of imagination at the leadership level we need, and if you're interested in purpose-led business, then you could do well to be more pirate. And if you are interested in reinventing democracy, then you'd be legitimately allowed to be more pirate. If you're interested in social justice and fairness, then you could authentically try and be more pirate. Because, my friends, if you really want to go about being courageous about change, or be more mischievous about making change, or be more powerful about making change, then I would invite you to try, in all the little things and every day, to try just being a little bit more pirate. Thank you very much.